Hello, welcome to Board with Paint. Today I'll be painting the Abominations from the 2021 version of HeroQuest. I started off priming these miniatures just as I did with the other ones in this series, and I'm beginning here with some Moonray Flesh being sprayed from the airbrush. This is because this paint color doesn't cover very well, and I had a bunch of miniatures to do, and this was just faster. This is going on all the undersides of the arms and the front of the chest, where we have that lighter shade of skin if you look at the artwork. And as you can see, I'm doing both the original version and the Mythic Tier sculpt. I'll be doing two base colors in this video. For the first set of minis, I'm using Tyrian Navy for most of the skin. This is going to go over anything that we didn't cover with the airbrush or that we want to be darker. We want to leave that light undershade on the underside of the limbs and the chest. Here we have the alternative sculpt mini. I'm doing the same thing here. I decided to use Raging Sea for the other colors, although I lost that footage, so this is still the original color, but you'll see some of the miniatures in later footage with the other blue color that I decided to use. Here I'm giving the loincloth a base coat of neutral gray. For some of the miniatures, I decided to use flat brown for the loincloth instead. The alternate sculpt is covered in barnacles. I'm giving them all a base coat of Wraithbone. And here he is with all the barnacles painted in. The other sculpt has a few barnacles on the shoulders. I'm just coloring those in as well with the Wraithbone. When I Googled pictures of starfishes, the first thing that came up was a very bright red starfish. So I decided to use Bloody Red from Vallejo Game Color and do all the starfishes on all these miniatures. These are only on the base game sculpt, and there are 2 on each miniature. You can obviously feel free to use whatever color you like. Now I'm going in with some thinned down Moonray Flesh and easing the transition between this and the darker blue colors. And here's, I think, the first time I'm showing one of the miniatures that I did with Raging Sea. Here I'm filling in the inside of the mouth with Abaddon Black. Now we'll start to do some highlighting, starting with the lighter skin tone that's on the chest and underarms. And to do this, I'm mixing a little bit of Offwhite in with the Moonray Flesh and applying this over the upturned surfaces. So here I'm hitting the muscles on the front of the chest and also the muscles on the arms and insides of the fingers. This sculpt has some pretty prominent palms, so I want to make sure I get some of those details highlighted as well. And we'll lighten this even more with some additional Off-White and apply a second highlight over those same areas. Now we'll highlight the gray loincloths by mixing Off-White into the neutral gray. We'll apply this to the tops of any of the folds in the fabric. And once again, we'll apply some more Off-White and lighten this even further and apply the same highlight, trying to cover slightly less space than the last one. To highlight the brown loincloths, I'm mixing in some of the Moonray Flesh that was already on the palette. And we apply this just as we did with the highlights on the gray earlier. The heavily barnacled sculpt has some rope around its loincloth. I'm using Iraqi Sand to pick this out. Now we'll highlight the dark blue skin by mixing dark sea blue and pale gray blue to come up with a nice highlight tone. And we'll apply this over the upturned surfaces, starting here with the fins on the back of the head. And I'm highlighting each of these going down the entire back. Now we'll start highlighting the shoulder muscles and the upper muscles of the arms, and also these scaly plates on the side of his face. Here I want to make sure I hit all of the little spikes that are coming out of the arms, and also the armor plates. We want to keep our highlights on the armor plates closer to the edge. We want that light edge to fade into darkness where it reaches the next plate, so we can provide a lot of contrast there and make it easy to pick those out from a distance. Here I'm hitting all the toes and finishing up with the armor plates on the legs. Now we'll speed through the same process on the heavily barnacled miniature. For a second highlight, we'll just mix in a little more pale gray blue. Here I'm being more deliberate on the highlights on the armor plates, drawing small lines going from dark to light, hitting the edge. This will give that scaly armor a little bit of texture, make it more interesting. We'll also want to highlight the back of the legs where it's facing upward, and we'll catch some light. And now I'm hitting all those spines and fins with a second coat of highlight. Here I'm hitting the fins on the head and also hitting both lips with this so that they're a little easier to see. To highlight the lighter blue, the process is the same. I'm using Innsmouth Blue and mixing in pale gray blue as the highlight color. And we'll put this on exactly the same way as we did before. Here I'm mixing a second highlight, just adding some more pale gray blue. And we'll hit the same highlighted areas, covering slightly less surface area, and remembering on those armor plates to use that sort of straight line drawn to the edge effect to give it texture. Here I'm using Morghast Bone to paint all of the nails on the toes and the fingers. We'll also use this for the teeth. For the shaft of the weapon, I'm using Zandri Dust. Next, I'm filling in the eyes with some Pro Acryl Bold Titanium White. This is the best white paint that's on the market right now. Has really nice, smooth coverage and is extremely bright. So it's really nice for getting those eyes to really stand out. You can obviously use whichever white you have if you don't have any of this, but I recommend picking some of this up if you get the chance. Now we'll apply a Reikland Fleshshade wash to the teeth. We want to both provide separation between the teeth and give the impression of some reddish gums in there. To shade the lighter parts of the skin, I'm using Seraphim Sepia, but I'm applying it pretty sparingly and pretty thinly, just on the lower areas and between some of the muscles. If you think you've globbed it on a little too much, just spread it out with your brush, or use a bigger brush to wick off excess. Next, I'm using Agrax Earthshade to shade all the claws and the shaft of the weapon. I also decided to use this to shade the starfish and all the barnacles. And obviously, we'll use a lot of this on this barnacle boy here. You can feel free to use quite a lot of this. Let this really pull in those recesses and fill in the little holes in the middle of the barnacles. Now that the eyes are dry, I'm going to give them a little coat of Lamenter's yellow glaze. You don't need much on your brush for this. You just want to tint the white slightly yellow to match the artwork. We're letting that bold titanium white do most of the work here. But the end result should be a nice bright yellow. Next, we'll highlight the claws and the teeth by mixing some of the bold titanium white in with the base color that we use, the Morghast Bone. And here I'm just hitting the upper surfaces of the nails so they stand out a little better. And then we can move on to the mouth and pick out some individual teeth with this. For the metal parts of the weapon, we're back to our sort of Zargon-inspired metal mix of Brodesode silver mixed with a little Payne's gray ink. And this will be applied to both ends of the metal weapon. And we'll also use this to paint the belt and whatever that is on the buckle. Like the other green cast miniatures in this series, I'm painting the bases with Waaagh flesh. Once the weapon is dry, we'll apply some edge highlighting with some Ironbreaker. This will go on the edges of the blade, any of the protruding areas that are coming out of it, and we'll also use this to highlight areas of the belt and belt buckle. This pretty much completes the miniature. Now, I always put a matte varnish over my miniatures when I complete them. I usually do this off camera, but in this case, after that had dried, I went back with some gloss varnish, just gave the eyes a little touch of this to make them shine a little bit. I thought that added a nice finishing touch. And there we have the completed Abominations. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel and leave a like. Leave me a comment down below, let me know what you thought. And if you're looking for more from me, you can check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where I'll sometimes post works in progress or give updates on what's coming up next. Thanks again so much for watching, and until next time, happy painting.